let's go ahead and get started. I'm so glad you could join me today, Toni. It is a pleasure. This is our very first Folk and Palate Live.
No.
So I am so excited to just dive right in. So I have to tell everyone, so our mutual friend, Angela Rakes, she is definitely deemed the connector. She put us in contact with one another. And I mean, it's like kindred spirits. Like we both believe in the power of food and how it's transformative. It can change your life, and it just runs through your veins once you kind of realize the power of it all. So I definitely want to talk to you about that today. And the interesting thing that I also have to say is that the very first time we met, I came to your house. You remember? It was a random weekday, maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
Tuesday night, we were having dinner together.
Yeah, but not just a dinner, Toni. It was like a 4 or 5 course meal. Okay. So that right there told me a lot. Seriously, it told me a lot about your hospitality. It told me how it's important to you to make people feel comfortable at Toni's table, right? And it's just the welcoming aura that came across. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I got to tell you, though, you know, it's so interesting because that's just the way I've always been. But then you turned me on to a podcast, remember? And you told me, you got to listen to this, about a woman who had been orphaned, that I know we'll get to this later,
right,
but she'd been orphaned and she became a caterer because that really fed part of her need to make people feel the way she wanted to feel, which is to feel welcome and stuff. So that's just, yeah. And plus, you know, I'm a freaking glutton. Like, yeah, dinner's going to be 4 or 5 courses.
Yeah, it was definitely 4 or 5
fancy,
courses.
But it's going to be a lot.
Inclusive of lamb and everything, and it was just amazing. So I knew from that point on. But so we are going to jump right into it.
Okay,
all of it.
Ready.
Okay. So I know that you spent your childhood, grew up some in Brooklyn, and then due to a series of events that we're going to get into, you also moved to San Francisco, where you live with your sister. But before that, you were born in Livorno, Italy, like a port city, I believe, on the western
exactly
coast
on the western coast.
So, and I know that you lived there for a few years, and then you went back and forth for a few more summers even after that. So tell me, even at that young age, did you realize anything about food at that time? Did it play a role, or was it even not present? Tell me about growing up there.
No, food. Okay, so I mean, then, you know, when we were first there, I was a baby. Who knows what I remembered, but I do know when I go back, if I'm there for more than a week, Italian begins to come back to me, right? Because my mother didn't want me learning Italian. She was strict with Indian women. Don't learn Italian because it will ruin the baby's English. However, I absorbed some of it. And I think that the food aspect of it definitely does, you know, resonate within me. When I'm back there, I feel very comfortable. I just feel, you know, relaxed. And it's interesting that my husband, the first husband, would always sit there and question my relationship with people. Like I was always got close to people quickly, and I was always into the food, and no matter what we were doing, a meal had to be involved. And then for work, he had to go to Italy. He had to go to, it wasn't Rome, maybe he was in Florence, but he came back and he said, oh man, I totally get you now. I totally get, he's like, you don't even know how much it resonates in you. It's like, oh, all right, well, that's good to know. Yeah, so growing up there and then, you know, coming back to the States when I was still a toddler, food was, you know, we were in New York. We were actually in the city in Manhattan, and then went out to Long Island when my family bought a house out there. But, you know, Southern family on one side, West Indian on the other. So food, very big, very important.
Very big in that. And I remember when we were talking, you mentioned something very interesting, and I think it came from a lot of your friends, either in the neighborhood or at school, but you had a lot of Jewish friends. There was a lot of Jewish people in that community.
Yeah, in New York, everybody's a little Jewish.
Of course. And the moms, the women in that community, you kind of fell into that culinary world. So tell me about that.
That was, oh gosh. So in New York, you know, like I said, everybody's a little Jewish. Even when my family decided to send me to first a Lutheran private school and then a Catholic boarding school, there were actually Jewish kids going there. So the exposure was certainly there. But when my mom passed away, I was very young. I was 8 years old. You know, this is back in the 70s. All these mothers sort of descended upon me, my family, but mostly me. And they were just sort of like, okay, we gotta watch out for Toni. We gotta feed her.
Mm-hmm.
And I really absorbed a lot of not just the food, but the culture, and that clearly made quite an imprint on me. But the food, and I was, kosher food doesn't have a very good reputation in terms of palatability. And I was just really fortunate to be surrounded by women, especially one in particular, Mrs. Glazer, who sadly is no longer with us. She should have bronze hands. I mean, yeah, you would walk into her kitchen, no matter who you were, no matter what walk of life you were from, and you were transported. And she just made me, I was dating her son actually, and she made me her de facto daughter. And it was great. She only had boys. So we were met for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. And that, again, like you just mentioned, that hospitality, that welcoming, you certainly had that, whether it's genetic or whether it's just from your relationships, from your travels, the places that you lived, it's there. That's one of the first things that resonated with me when we met that first time. So that is so clear. But we're gonna go back to
it's a mirror too, you know that, right?
yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's Angela is a goddess in her own right, and she kept saying, "You two are gonna click. I know what I know," and she was so right. It was like meeting, my doppelganger.